Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam and I don't understand why people make yellow markers. They don't do anything. But today we are here to do something. That something being determining the top 20 most powerful pirates in One Piece. Why? Because I want to. Where? Right here. And how? Well, that's a very important question that we will get into. Firstly, though, this video is part of September, where for the entire month of September, every time someone subscribes to this channel, we will be donating 10 cents to Make-A-Wish Australia, a group who work to grant life-changing wishes for children with critical illness. And if enough of you hit that big, beautiful red button, then it could legitimately bankrupt me, but that's okay because it's all for a good cause. There's also a link in the description to our fundraising page if you'd like to donate directly. It's an absolutely fantastic cause, and please do say hi in the comments below if you are a new member of the Grand Fleet. Welcome. All right, let's get into this crazy endeavor. If you're incredibly impatient, then you can skip to this time to just jump straight into the list. But I would highly recommend that you stay and listen to the methodology, otherwise things may be a little bit confusing. So the most powerful pirate in One Piece, that whole thing of powerful, it's a very vague statement, and I have done my very best to unvaguify it. So I essentially took every pirate in One Piece and assigned them a score according to 4 different areas that I would define as coming under the umbrella of power. And this took a long time. Do you have any idea how many pirates there are in One Piece? Because I do. It's a lot. But those 4 categories are strength, speed, intelligence, and haki. Strength is designed to measure both offensive and defensive capabilities. For example, someone like Kaido would be a perfect 10 for strength because he possesses world-class attack and defense. Whereas someone like Nami would be a 5 because she's capable of incredibly devastating attacks, but has almost 0 defensive capabilities. She is a glass cannon, if you will. Speed, I think, is a fairly straightforward one. If a character is fast, then they'll probably score pretty highly here. Although speed takes both agility and endurance into consideration because it's great to be fast and stuff, but it's not so great if you get tired easily. So for example, Usopp would be that. He can run at comically fast speeds, but his endurance to keep it up would be lacking compared to the more top tier combatants. Intelligence is also important. Fast and strong characters are amazing, but it's all nigh on worthless if they are complete dunces. Big Mom would be our obvious illustration here. She is quite possibly the most powerful human being thing on the planet. However, her barely functioning brain matter makes that power very, very difficult to implement efficiently. And then of course we have haki. It's important that haki has its own category because it's a straight up upgrade. If you don't have it or you don't have a certain type of it, then you are at an automatic disadvantage. And that's just how it be. So in this section, a combatant would receive 2.5 points for each basic armament or observation haki type, and a further 2 points if they have Conqueror's haki, which is weighted slightly less because quite frankly, Conqueror's, it's just less useful out of the box than the other 2. And then a recipient shall be awarded a further 1 point for any advanced invocations of the 3 haki brands to result in a basic score out of 10. Every category is scored out of 10, by the way, and the scores of those 4 categories are then slammed together to create a glorious number. Then through the sorcery of mathematics, that number out of 40 is then converted into a final score out of 100. And the reason why I do this is because saying 90 out of 100 gives you a far better impression than saying like 36 out of 40. What does that even mean? It sounds stupid. You know, come to think of it, I probably just could have made each category out of 25, but I didn't. So we're just gonna have to deal with this. So let's get into it, as sliding into the DMs of 20th place is the one and only Jinbabe, with quite a strong showing actually. Our helmsman's main highlight here would be intelligence because he is both highly analytical as well as possesses incredibly potent instinctual battle sense. I will say what lets him down a bit is speed, but also haki. Jinbei scores a solid 5 here because he knows both observation and armament, but sadly no advancements. However, here's another fun thing that I did not mention in the intro. There is also a secret bonus category known as an X Factor, where we award points to specific individual traits that don't fit into the 4 basic categories. These can be mental, physical, or devil fruit related, and in Jinbei's case, he is a martial arts master, which will score him 1 X Factor bonus point, because formal training is generally better than self-styled brawling. But for number 19, did someone say Her Majesty? Because the Queen is in the house, although to be honest, Queen is a bit of a tough one, because you'll notice that he scored a 5 in the haki category. However, at the time of recording this video, that should be a 0, because Queen hasn't actually displayed any haki use. However, I'm making what I would consider to be a reasonable assumption that a Calamity of Kaido's crew must know at least basic observation and armament. Maybe I shouldn't, but I am. In terms of intelligence, it's also a bit meh. Queen does score very mid in both analytical and instinctual brain function because he's incredibly arrogant and doesn't really think through his actions as best he could, although he is still well above average. Plus, his Dino-Borg ingenuity in nature gives him a big X factor of unpredictability, and you know what else is unpredictable? Otters! You never know when they'll show up in a video wearing a One Piece themed hat. And speaking of the owner of said hat, in the somewhat coveted 18th place we do find ourselves with one Portgasti Ace, who is fairly interesting because just like Queen, I've had to make some assumptions here, as weirdly enough, Ace isn't actually a confirmed user of observation haki, just conquerors and armament. But I have to believe that he is because his position in the world it makes so little sense without that very basic skill. To be the fairest I could be, Ace is an unfortunately pre-haki character and he never got to demonstrate anything outside of the Luffy flashback, so it's all a bit meh. However, in Ace's favor, he does have a Fireboy X factor, because fire generation and manipulation is pretty amazing, especially when you can just casually conjure miniature suns. Where he suffers most is intelligence. Ace is a character who roams about almost entirely based on instinct, and he lacks a much bigger picture analytical awareness. His in-battle senses are also quite lacking, as shown by the fact that he's never actually won a fight in the series, and tends to pick his clashes very, very poorly. But in keeping with our fire theme, next up in 17th place is the King, or King, just King I should say, only half a point ahead of Ace. And that comes very much from a minor speed advantage. King is quite ridiculously fast, which is very much assisted by his ancient Zoan fruit, for which he also receives a Flyboy X factor, because flight is very important in One Piece and never to be underestimated. I'd also like to point out the general fun that our last three contenders have been a Queen, a King, and an Ace, but our playing card motif does not stop there. Because in 16th place we have our beloved Joker of One Piece, Mr. Don Quixote Doflamingo. Now this may be a fairly controversial result, placing him above both King and Queen, however what it comes down to is simply haki. Despite being below or on par with them in terms of strength, speed, and intelligence, Doflamingo receives a very valuable boost due to being a user of all three types of haki. There's really no other way to put it, having Conqueror's haki is just better than not having it. Also, Doflamingo does receive bonus points for his insane Devil Fruit, in particular because it is awakened. And it's an interesting question about whether or not Dofi could stack up against the big beastie boys. I think Queen would be especially difficult because they are both super flamboyant, fancy sunglasses wearing blondes. As is our 15th place contender, blonde Tholomew Kuma. Alright, I lied. He's not actually blonde. Although who's to say, maybe he is a natural blonde and he just dyes his cyborg hair. He's more of a brunette cyborg wearing an adorable bear cap. But Kuma is one of the more intriguing characters on this list because take note that he has a score of 0 in haki, absolute 0, because Kuma has never displayed a single lick of haki related goodness, and yet he manages to be on this list regardless. And that's because his other three base stats are just insane. In particular, I'd like to point out the perfect scores in speed and intelligence, and just to explain this a bit, I actually used Kuma as my benchmark for perfect speed because he can effectively teleport using his insane repelling powers. And because he is a cyborg, the idea of endurance is all but irrelevant. That cyborg nature also makes Kuma nigh on perfect as an analyst, but this is balanced with his remaining human instinct, which makes Kuma something of a paragon of intelligence. Or at least he was. These days, he's more of a paragon of transport. But next up, we have a fellow teleportation buddy, Trafalgar Law, sticking his nose into the rear end of 14th place. I don't know why I use that metaphor, but I'm not changing it. Law is notable because his strength, speed, and haki are all kind of meh compared to many of the top 20 at large. However, he is demonstrably more intelligent than most, and his big saving grace is the X factor of possessing a god-tier Devil Fruit. And by the way, if you're wondering why Law's speed grade is so low, it's because he can only teleport within a certain radius, and every use of the Ope no Mi drastically reduces his stamina. So basically, he's impossibly fast, but only within a certain area, and only for a certain amount of time. It's not that great. Law is the kind of guy who goes hard and fast, but not necessarily all night long, as every pop song in history would encourage us to do. With that said, I suspect someone who could pull off such a feat would be our 13th place contender, Marco the Phoenix, because he can regenerate and stuff, which is a fact that gives him a perfect boost in the world of defense and endurance. But absolutely nothing about Marco is to be understated. He is also phenomenally intelligent, and even wields a huge degree of raw firepower. Plus, just like King, Marco receives a Flyboy X factor, which sends him up and away, flying high and stuff, but not quite high enough, because quite notably, 13th place is not first place, or second, or third, and so on until we get to 13th, which is where Marco is. Guess who's in 12th place though? Actually, don't. I'm just going to tell you. It is Zoro, and I think that this is another very fascinating outcome, because Zoro ends up being barely inferior to Marco in most areas, but once again, it is the haki that lifts him up. As a user of all three basic brands, Zoro gets that solid 7 in a category where Marco could only muster a mere 5. Also, Zoro has an Iron Will buff, which was quite commonly awarded amongst the hundreds of pirates I spent far too long ranking. Really, at this point in the series though, Zoro is he's a solid boy. And I don't just say that because he's my favorite character, although it does admittedly make me very happy to say that. You could say I'm about as happy as a pig in mud if that pig were to be Blackbeard, and the mud was to be the blood of his close friends that he seems to ever so consistently murder. He's our number 11 though, and the one thing that we should immediately zero in on is the whopping 9 that Teach received for intelligence. This was a tough one, but Blackbeard is almost the opposite of Ace. Sure, outwardly Teach seems to be a bit of a dirt, but all of his fights are very carefully planned and curated. He chooses his conflicts to perfection. And his other main benefit is an X factor that I've labeled multi-fruit madness, for which Blackbeard was awarded the maximum amount of available bonus points due to holding 2 of the world's most ridiculously powerful devil fruits, so he deserves at least that. Where he loses points is speed because he's a rather hefty gentleman. Perhaps one too many cherry pies, you know? And also Blackbeard does lose out slightly in terms of strength, because whilst Blackbeard's offensive powers are, well, they're literally world-shaking, his defensive abilities are sorely lacking for a man in his position. In fact, he actively takes more damage than most people. For a different man in a different position now, here's Drakeul Mihawk bending over, and he's doing so in order to pick up his 10th place finish on this list, which is kind of crazy because his scores are almost perfect in 3 different areas. But once again, he suffers due to the common theme of this ranking, which is all about haki. Mihawk is only a confirmed user of basic observation and armament, no conquerors or no advancements that we know of. And I would never make the assumption that Mihawk has conqueror's haki, primarily because he has failed to conquer his main enemy in this world, which is boredom. But if he did, then Mihawk may become incredibly close to topping this list, and quite frankly, there's going to be a lot of characters above him, I'm just going to say right here and now, is purely based on haki advantages. One of which is renowned donut enthusiast Charlotte Katakuri, sliding his Ely self into 9th place. Katakuri is a tip-top all-rounder. There is no area in which he is severely lacking, which is very much to be expected from someone who many believe to be the perfect being. Okay, here's an impression of Katakuri. I like donuts. However, just like Katakuri's mouth, there are various cracks in each area as well, although he is currently our highest scoring haki user because not only does he have all 3 basic types, but he wields the advantage of future sight. So that's a very nice number there, good sir. You've set a very strong standard that apparently only 8 characters are capable of surpassing. One of which is the specter of the legendary Kozuki Odin. Actually, probably not the specter, more like the guy, the living guy. Odin possesses what I would call stupid power, because he just seems to have been born with God mode activated. He's capable of messing around at the top of the world with only one advanced application of haki, mind you, and I would say the only field that he is slightly lacking in would be intelligence. Odin has amazing instinct, but he is less than great with analytical skill. He's very childlike, which does work for him, because he can generally slice his way out of any situation, except for the various situations in which he couldn't, like, you know, the time that he was cooked alive. That was pretty rough. From Cooking Man to Eating Man now though, our magnificent 7th place dude is the guy who is Monkey D. Luffy. His strength, top tier. Speed, relentlessly quick. Intelligence, well, we gotta be honest here. Luffy does have the Odin problem of being fantastically instinctual, whilst not really thoroughly thinking out things as much as he maybe could. But who cares, because look at this beautiful haki, a perfect score of 10, because Luffy has legitimately everything. All of the basics and now all of the advancements. Plus, Luffy does have the special X factor called Unstoppable Will. We've had a couple of Iron Wills at this point, but Luffy goes even beyond that and actively redefines what true willpower really means, which in many cases has been his only saving grace in battle. It's just hard to know what else to say other than Luffy. He's good at stuff. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Luffy was taught stuff by the veritable master of stuff, Silver's Ray Lee, who retains a solid superiority to Luffy in every base stat with the exception of Haki. And that's because Rayleigh sadly has yet to display a form of advanced conquerors. So he loses one very valuable point there. To be fair, he may well have it, but I'm less comfortable making that assumption than I am with the basic types. I'm also very uncomfortable with the idea of a man who sells himself into slavery for funsies. Rayleigh has strange hobbies to say the least, you weird old man. But he does comfortably tank Marine Admirals, so you know what, he's entitled to his bizarre interests. Meanwhile, cracking the top 5 is our Crimson Lord Shanks. Sadly, Shanks is always tough because he may possess any number of skills and advantages that we are not yet aware of, and admittedly, some assumptions are being made here in terms of speed and strength. However, for a man who single-handedly stopped an entire war, holds the title of Emperor, and looks great with a big bushy mustache that I think he should grow out, I think that his strength, speed, and intelligence are about right. The only way he could really do much better is if it was confirmed that he possesses advanced observation or armament haki. And if that does happen, then, well, damn. We'll just have to go ahead and remake this entire list because Shanks had the audacity to show up to the One Piece party 25 years late. Thanks, Shanks. Next up in 4th though, we have the party queen, Charlotte Linlin, who, look at this, has our very first perfect score for strength. In terms of both offense and defense, there is no improvement to be made over Big Mom. A few rare individuals have equalized this achievement, but this is as good as it gets. In fact, Linlin also receives a huge X factor of invulnerability because her defenses, quite frankly, go beyond the very concept of defense. Without any kind of haki, her skin is just plain invulnerable to almost any attack. Just like Big Mom herself, it is utterly insane. But what loses her top spot is, it's definitely intelligence. I think we all expected that. Big Mom is a very poor thinker, and much more so than Ace is governed by raw instinct and emotion. And in terms of haki, all she lacks is advanced observation. If Linlin had that, then we'd have another perfect score. But she doesn't, because apparently advanced observation is surprisingly difficult to come by. In fact, even our bronze medal finisher Goldie Roger currently lacks in this area. Although let's be real, he can afford to chill a bit due to his accomplishments everywhere else. I mean, Roger is the classic case of you versus the guy she tells you not to worry about. You should in fact be worried. Very, very worried. Roger does have a perfect score for strength because, quite frankly, anyone who can fight Whitebeard to a stalemate, I think it's fairly inarguable, and the same goes for the high speed score. Roger also notably has Luffy's X factor of unstoppable will, which has propelled him into becoming the most famous pirate of all time. Not necessarily the most powerful though, at least not according to my crazy system. Because in second place with a perfect score of 100 is the strongest man in the world, Edward Newgate. It's almost boring to talk about Whitebeard because there isn't much to say other than he is strong and you are not. So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna nitpick. Whitebeard doesn't get a perfect score because, as mentioned, Bartholomew Kuma is our top metric for speed in the pirate world. With intelligence, Whitebeard is about as good as they come, being on par with Sengoku as a battle commander and possessing superb instincts, but once again, he's not perfect though. Nobody is, except for, I suppose, Kuma, who I gave a 10 as well. I think that this is the most I've praised Kuma in any video I've ever done. The dude is underrated. And of course, Whitebeard has not demonstrated advanced observation haki, so that's a point taken away there. However, his Iron Will X factor makes up for all of that and gives Whitebeard a nice round perfect 100.0s. And I guess at this stage I should say that due to the X factors, it is indeed possible to score over 100 points, which our first place finisher certainly did. So here he is, our totally unexpected champion of all that is power. It is Mr. Always Bet on Kaido. And a lot of his stats are very similar to Whitebeard, as they should be. Although one area where Kaido gets a bit lax is intelligence, because he's not smart, but his monumental arrogance is a grand detriment to any form of intelligence. However, this is well compensated through his invulnerability X factor, which is the same one that was given to Big Mom. The fact that Kaido cannot even be slightly injured unless it's an advanced invocation of haki is ridiculous, and is most certainly what cultivates his arrogance. Hard to argue though, because when you are the strongest creature in the world, that's bound to go to your head, and it's not like he can't back it up, because in a list of well over 300 pirates that I painstakingly ranked, Kaido has attained the undisputed crown of glory. But to crown yourself with some glory though, here is another video. It's about One Piece, which is the thing that you like. There's always more to learn, explore, and experience in this wonderful series, so I look forward to seeing you there.